talking to veteran comic artist Matt Wagner. Thanks very much for being with us today, Mr. Wagner.
My pleasure.
You know, I have admired your work for a number of years. I think the first thing that I had seen you work on was Batman and the Monster Man, which I was very impressed with you. And I later picked up Faces, which I understand some of your earlier work. But you've done a lot of Batman. Are there any other characters that you plan on doing any work on, or is it sort of going to be, I mean, you're fabulous with Batman. I wouldn't mind seeing you continue doing that. I'm sort of wondering what's on the horizon for you.
Well, of course, in addition to the work I do for the big companies, I'm kind of best known for my own creator-owned properties, Mage and Grendel. Last year was Grendel's 25th anniversary, so I just finished an 8-issue brand new Grendel series for last year. I'm currently writing, doing the cover art for, and acting as art director for Dynamite Comics' relaunch of Zorro. And that's great fun, you know. I mean, if you like Batman, you gotta love Zorro, right? You know, I mean, they're basically the same character, you know. And that's been a labor of love. Again, I've loved that character ever since I was a kid. And then I'm also writing a revamp of a kind of obscure DC character for Vertigo, for the Vertigo line, called Madame Xanadu. And that's completely different. You know, I really like to kind of mix up what I do, and that's a completely different approach. It's more kind of a feminine storyline rather than a more masculine storyline like Zorro. It's a gothic romance that spans centuries of time. So I get to work in a lot of different time periods and a lot of different settings, so that's really cool too. And then, you know, I got my eyes on some other DC characters, and I'm sure I'll do something with them in the future.
Now, in terms of your personal preference, do you like working on some of the major characters with, like, say, DC, or do you prefer working on, you know, your own characters like Grendel?
Well, you know, it's kind of apples and oranges. You know, I always equate when I work on the big characters, or for the characters owned by the big companies, I always equate it to a band doing cover versions of songs, you know? You're trying to pay homage to the stuff that inspired you to create your own work. So I certainly like going and playing with the big boys' toys, but I always like coming home to my own roost too. So,
how did you get started in comics?
It's what I've wanted to do ever since I was a little tiny kid. My mom was an English teacher and always encouraged me to read and read and read. I was an only child who grew up kind of out in the country before there was much video entertainment, and so I learned to draw to entertain myself, and comics were reading and drawing all in one neat package.
Where do you see the comics industry going? I mean, one of the things that I've heard some people saying in some panels at this particular convention is that a lot of the readers of comics today tend to be a little bit older. A lot of the comics that are coming out are aimed at more mature audiences. You know, how do you feel about that versus, you know, say, trying to foster some interest in younger people in comic books?
Well, you know, I think that's just kind of a backlash. I think for, decades, they were aimed almost exclusively at young readers. And now they're aimed almost exclusively at old readers. And I think eventually that'll all balance itself out, like almost any medium, to where you'll have a big array for every age group. You know, I mean, look at television. Used to be the only programming for kids where stuff like Sesame Street or Captain Kangaroo or really crappy Saturday morning cartoons. Well, now, look, there's so much programming for young viewers, you know. And additionally, then, the programming for the older viewers has gotten better and more complex and of a higher quality as well. So I tend to think that's going to average itself out in the long run anyway. So,
where do you see the comics industry going in the future?
Well, I don't know. You know, there's much speculation as to whether print will be, you know, still the dominant medium for getting this across, or whether it'll be on online. I think that remains to be seen. I think there's still a certain sensual, tactile quality to handling a book that just isn't there as far as viewing things on a computer screen. But then again, you know, I'm an old fart, so maybe the kids feel differently. Whatever happens, I don't think it really matters. I think comics will maintain that special that special intimate magic that happens when you have this synthesis of words and pictures that play off each other and support and define each other in such a unique fashion. Because it's not like an illustrated story. It's not like a film on paper. It's its own unique critter. And believe me, every comic reader knows what I mean when I say that.